Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Cindy Hill, and I'm the president of the Los Altos Library Endowment, affectionately called LOLLY. LOLLY is aimed at supporting the Los Altos Library's services and collections, such as enhancing the scientific, medical, and technological materials for all ages. The LOLLY board members are honored to be co-presenting this event tonight, along with Silicon Valley Reads and the Santa Clara County Library District. This year's theme for Silicon Valley Reads is Connecting, and we are pleased to have Carol Novello with us this evening. Carol is the author of the book Mutual Rescue, which epitomizes how people can connect with animals and animals with people. We are excited to have Carol for many reasons, one of which is that she is a former longtime resident of Los Altos. Before we get started with the program, I'd like to share a short video about Silicon Valley Reads.
Welcome to Silicon Valley Reads. Started in 2003 as a one book, one community program, Silicon Valley Reads has grown to become a thriving community engagement initiative throughout Santa Clara County, including books and events for all ages. Presented by the Santa Clara County Office of Education, the Santa Clara County Library District, and the San Jose Public Library, Silicon Valley Reads gives our community new perspectives and understanding of important, relevant issues and encourages people to read, think, discuss, and engage. The theme for 2021 is Connecting. We are adjusting to living our lives in a pandemic with more solitude than ever before. This year, we are focused on finding our commonalities and talking about the things that bring us comfort and joy. We've selected 10 books to encourage everyone to find the connections that are uniquely meaningful to them, whether through relationships, food, nature, art, music, animals, or books. We hope you enjoy today's presentation. Thank you for attending.
Especially during this pandemic, we are all looking for meaningful connections. Today, we will hear many heartfelt stories about ways in which people connect with their pets and vice versa. Mutual Rescue came on the scene exactly 5 years ago with the release of its first film, Eric and Petey, which soon had more than 100 million online views, propelling the new initiative to international attention. 11 more films have been made since then. Here's a sneak peek at them.
I've heard people describe animals like angels, coming in and loving and supporting someone in such an amazing way.
I'm still here because a shelter dog saved my life.
She really was the one that pulled me out of my darkness.
That little kitten helped me realize that I wasn't just a sack of damaged goods.
It was rough seeing her at first. She had burns all over her face. She could barely open her eyes. We had to take her home.
Someone found him and transported him to the local shelter where he had surgery that ended up saving his life.
Jade was born with autism. I wanted her just to have a normal life and not be judged.
I would have never known my full potential if I hadn't helped the shelter dog find hers first.
The gift she's given me is the ability to say being happy doesn't erase Aria's memory.
Until I started working with dogs, I didn't know what love was.
I can't imagine our life the way it is now without Lollipop.
We call the three of us a family. Adopting this little cat that no one wanted has been the best decision that we've ever made.
Her coming into our home and the way that she's changed us has been nothing short of a miracle.
I truly don't know if I would be sitting here today if I had not adopted Andy.
I overdosed more times than I can remember. Had he not entered my life, it's nearly a guarantee that I would have relapsed and I would have died.
I felt like I was helping him with his disabilities, but I realized that he was actually helping me with mine.
Kylie told me to take care of Liza, but it's also like she whispered to Liza to take care of me.
Who rescued whom? I mean, did I rescue him or did he rescue me?
Oh my, that's very moving. And now I'd like to introduce Kurt excuse me, Kurt, who will be interviewing Carol Novello. Kurt serves as the president of Humane Society Silicon Valley, where he is thrilled to lead a talented and passionate team that is advancing the cause of animal welfare locally, regionally, and nationally. Prior to HSSV, Kurt spent 20 years helping organizations create sustainable growth in a variety of operating and advisory roles. He received his MBA from Harvard Business School and his bachelor's degree in electrical and computer engineering from Rice University. Kurt is eternally grateful to have been rescued by his wife Charu and their dogs. Welcome, Kurt.
Thanks, Cindy. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. And as Cindy mentioned, I actually have all of our dogs with me here this evening. You can see them snoozing behind me in the background, and maybe introduce them a little bit later on. But as we get started here, it's actually my pleasure to introduce you to the author of the book we're talking about today, Carol Novello. And so just to give a little bit of background on Carol, she is the founder of Mutual Rescue, which, as you just saw, is a national initiative highlighting the connection between people and pets. And it's something that we are building in order to support life-saving efforts in communities across the nation in shelters where all of these animals are coming in and looking for homes. Carol and I actually have quite a few things in common, including our history. So she also began her career in the corporate sector, earned an MBA from Harvard Business School, and then spent several years here in the software industry, most recently at Intuit, where she had senior leadership roles. And at that point, she made the transition to come over to Humane Society Silicon Valley. And she spent about 10 years here leading the organization before handing the baton over to me in 2020. So I've been delighted to get to work with her in a variety of capacities, and we're happy to get to have a chat tonight and tell you more about the book.
Hey, Kurt.
Hi, Carol. Welcome.
Thank
you.
Good
to see you.
Yeah, and I also need to introduce my crew. I've only one of two are showing up, but this is Herbie. So we've got look at the camera, Herb. We've got equal representation between cats and dogs this evening.
Excellent, excellent. And Herbie is also a former resident of Los Altos, so I'm glad that he could join us.
Yeah, and he's also a Humane Society Silicon Valley alum too. So
excellent, excellent. Yeah. And so is I should introduce. This is Cooper over here, who is snoozing on this side of me. He is an HSSV alum, and we'll maybe have a trivia question later on for people who can guess his breed. But we adopted him here 4 or 5 years ago now, and as you can see, he's got a few other brothers and sisters that may decide to bark or wrestle as we go. So hopefully, you might hear from them, or if you can hear the snoring right now, that's where we'll start. So. So yeah, Carol, I guess I know there are a lot of people here joining us for the first time. So I think it's always interesting to find out what is it that inspired you to kind of focus on this concept of mutual rescue and, eventually write the book and bring us here to where we're at today.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned in the introduction, I spent a good portion of my career as a senior executive in Silicon Valley. And just through serendipity, I had the opportunity to join the board at Humane Society Silicon Valley, and one thing led to another, and then I was asked to become president. And one of the things that was so interesting about it is that people would sometimes say to me, why are you helping animals when you could be helping people? And I thought that was a curious question, because animals have always played such a big role in my life. Plus, I also was seeing from everyone who was adopting from HSSV just how impactful it was to bring an animal into your family. And so I really wanted to try and answer that question for people in a more substantial way. And I actually started out just doing a presentation in Silicon Valley. I was going to a lot of Rotary clubs and doing a presentation called Why Helping Animals Helps People. And in that presentation, I actually told the story of Erica Gray, who adopted Petey from Humane Society of Silicon Valley. And that was kind of the way I was illustrating that point. And one thing led to another, and we had a new board member join at HSSV, Sally Burgoyne, who was on the board of the Tech Museum. And she had worked with David Whitman, who produced the Tech Awards for the Tech Museum, and said, hey, you know, David really wants to do something with animals. So why don't the two of you meet? So we met, and I thought, oh my gosh, this guy is a creative genius, and I have no idea how we're going to work together. But I told him about this concept of, you know, why helping animals helps people. And I said, can you make that magical? Like, how do we just breathe some life into it? And David is actually the one who coined the phrase mutual rescue, and also said, I think we should make short films that really bring these stories to life and really help make it visceral for people. They can really feel it in their body. And so we decided to do a call for stories. We wanted it to be a national effort because we wanted to highlight how important it is to be supporting your local shelter no matter where you live. And that led to creating our first short film, Eric and Petey, and then it just went crazy viral. And next thing you know, we had this new initiative that was born, and
100 million viral views later, and yes.
Yeah.
What? So how did you and David react when you first saw Eric and Petey being sent out to the world and all of a sudden going viral?
Yeah, well, it's actually really funny. David saved this email. We passed 5,000 views, and I was like thrilled. I was like, oh my gosh, we have 5,000 views. You know, like, David, that's amazing. Can you believe it? 5,000 people saw this film. And so he's like saved that email, and like every time a zero got added into the views, like we hit 50,000, he's like, 5,000, that was nothing. 500,000 views, that was nothing. 5 million views, that was nothing. 50 million views. It was just like, it's like, we're totally unprepared for that. And I remember it was like, we launched it on Valentine's Day, 2016. And it took off maybe about 2 weeks later. So SF Gate posted Eric and Petey on their Facebook page, and that one post had 35 million views, 200,000 shares, and 50,000 comments. I mean, wow. just crazy. And Eric and Petey actually ended up being voted by the New York Times the #1 news video story out of California in 2016.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing. But I just remember it was a Sunday afternoon, and Eric and I are on the phone like, oh my God, this is crazy. And he's going on Rachel Ray. Like, I mean, it was just like, we were completely unprepared. And so we're like on the phone trying to talk through like getting him, like what he had to do on Rachel Ray and this whole thing. So it was more than we ever really imagined. But I think what was interesting about it, I still remember telling friends about it. And in my bones, I knew I was supposed to tell this story. I knew that it was something I needed to get out into the world. So in hindsight, I felt very aligned with getting that film made and getting it out into the world. And it really was an honor to be able to tell this story.
Well, absolutely. And I think that one of those things where in hindsight, it makes so much sense, and it was such the right time and the right message for that to go. And obviously it's resonated with quite a few people along the way as well. So I think that, even over and beyond all of the people reacting to Eric and Petey, what was it like to have folks, kind of reaching out and sharing stories and kind of go into that next phase of people kind of coming back to talk about their own experiences?
Yeah, I mean, what was so interesting about it, I mean, a lot of things came out of Eric and Petey. One of the things that I love the most is how many people actually said, I adopted an animal because I saw that film. I mean, that's why we did it. That's what we wanted. But the book also came out of that. So I actually was attending a workshop. This is January of 2016. I was attending a workshop on how to write a New York Times bestseller. And which unfortunately, Mutual Rescue has not yet become a New York Times bestseller. But
not yet.
Yeah, not giving up. But anyway, I got the rough cut of Eric and Petey when I was at that workshop. And I asked the facilitator, I said, could I share this rough cut? I'd love to get some feedback. So I shared the rough cut, and the facilitator, her name is Marcy Scheimoff. She's, I think she's like the #1 New York Times best-selling author for women. She's just been on it numerous times and written a lot of nonfiction. But anyway, I showed the film and she pulled me aside afterwards and she said, I never do this. She said, but I totally think you're onto something. I want to introduce you to my literary agent. And that is actually how Mutual Rescue, the book, came into being. And because of the Eric and Petey story, what we did when we launched that film is we did a call for stories. We asked people to submit their stories about how they were rescued by an animal. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of submissions. And many of those stories, several of them did get turned into films. And then a lot of them are in the book. And so that's how the book came into being. And a lot of the stories that came there came from those submissions.
Did you have any particular favorite stories that came and made it into the book, either some personal ones or from others that shared them with you?
Yeah, you know, the stories that are submitted, they're all so special that I would never want to call out, you know, one particular animal, one particular person is being my favorite. So I'm gonna go with my personal animals. Because I do share a lot of stories about the animals in my life as they played out in the book. And I think probably the one that I tell the most and I love the most is how my father was transformed by a cat that came into our life when I was in elementary school. And this cat's name was Chester. But the reason why it sticks out in my mind so much is my father. I love my father. He was one of my favorite people on the planet. Had a wonderful, lovely relationship with him before he passed. But he did not like cats. And this always perplexed me because my dad was like so awesome, but he just really didn't care about animals all that much. And in fact, I can like just picture him. It's like the 70s. So we're like, you know, I'm in our harvest gold kitchen with the avocado green countertops, like hanging out on the floor. My dad's wagging his finger at me and going, don't kiss the cat. Cats have germs. Like, that was his whole thing. But we got Chester, who my sister had a friend, and this was her friend's cat, and she wasn't, the landlord found out. So they had to do something with Chester. But the intent was to get Chester back. We were just going to keep him temporarily. But anyway, Chester came into our house and he just decided that my dad was his guy. And my dad ignored him and, you know, acted like he didn't like him or whatever. But every Friday night, my dad would go upstairs in the den. He'd sit in his burnt orange leather chair because it is the 70s. And he would watch Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser. And no one else in the family. It's like, oh God, Dad, you know, like just, you know, who wants to do that? Well, Chester did, and he would follow my dad up into his den and curl up in the crook of his arm and just sit on his lap and purr and purr and purr and watch Lou with my dad. And one day I walked by and I did a double take and I was like, look who's kissing the cat. And but the reason why I love that story so much is because of how Chester transformed my father. And that is, he did not change my father by trying to change his mind. He changed my father by opening his heart. And that is the lesson that I took away from that and why it stands out in my mind so vividly. And he was not, like, Chester wasn't deterred that my father didn't like him. Like, he didn't take it personally, like, well, he must not like me and I must suck. You know what I mean? Like there was no, you know, false humility there. It was like, Chester's like, I know I rock.
I'm awesome. He'll figure it out eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll figure it out eventually. And you may be acting like a jerk, but I actually know you're really a cool guy. And, you know, you're gonna show me how awesome you are too. And, you know, gosh, can't we all learn from that? Honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the amazing theme as you look through all of these stories of the transformation that happens for everyone involved. And it's interesting because I think that you're right. The animals have, you know, new families and new lives, but they're, you know, kind of they bring what they've always brought. And in many ways, it's the humans who go through more of the emotional journey. And I think we learn a lot more from them than vice versa. So.
Well, I think one of the things that I especially like about rescue animals is that I think in many cases they know they're getting a second chance, and they seem to be just extra appreciative of receiving the love and attention that humans are willing to give them. And I think that's really pretty special and amazing. And in doing that, I also think that it reminds us personally that we also deserve our own second chances. And that's pretty amazing too. And I think about some of the animals that have been transformed in the care at Humane Society of Silicon Valley. I'm always just stunned by the resilience. I mean, I just feel like if we could bottle the resilience of the animals that have come through Silicon Valley, you know, it would be a hot product in demand, because it really is stunning how resilient they are, and they really are role models for us in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I've heard several people say, oh, it's, you know, I really wish that they could talk and I could know where they came from and all of that. And in many ways that would terrify me, because I think the stories that you would hear of what they had made it through and kind of shown that resilience and hope from is just incredible. So I think it's it's an amazing privilege that, you know, we get to do that. And I know you as well were, you know, that was something to engage both the head and the heart. So
yeah.
And that, I guess that's the other thing that really strikes me about the book here is the, you know, adding the piece of kind of the science and the explanation behind all of the stories that are very resonant with so many people. And I think that's you know, we watch the Eric and Petey video and we can see pieces of ourselves and all of that. But were you kind of surprised when you started looking around to do the research and finding that there were so many different sort of studies and academic papers and other science that fit into the story?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is I've been collecting the stories and the science for years. And so when I sat down to write the book, I was just like sifting through all this stuff that I'd collected over the years. And then, you know, continued to do research and found out, you know, there's even more out there. But I think one of the reasons I was so excited about having the opportunity to write the book is because I wanted to bring the science in and help people understand it's not just a heart thing, it's a head thing too. And the data is proving it. Like this is a universal experience that people are having. And you have a tendency with your own animals to just think, oh, it's just me, or, you know, does anybody else really experience it the way I experience it? And so it is at the same time a unique experience because it's about you and whatever animals in your life, but it is also a universal experience because so many people are having it as well. And the science is proving that. I mean, I love that they're able to prove that when you're interacting with an animal, there are physiological changes in your body. You're releasing these biochemicals, you know, prolactin, oxytocin, serotonin, all these feel-good biochemicals are going through your body. And, you know, I talk about one of my cats, Wilbur, that I had for many years. And, you know, he was like this furry antidepressant. I mean, that was the best way to describe him. And he always made me laugh. I mean, it was just, he was hilarious. And I so valued that. And then to learn that, you know, he really was helping me release serotonin in my body was pretty amazing. But the other thing that's cool is that they've done, you know, the studies talk about this. They've only done it with dogs, I believe, but dogs are releasing similar biochemicals in their body when they're interacting with humans. So it really is mutual. It's going both ways. So they're enjoying it as much as we are.
Yes, indeed. And that's, I always laughed, is like, isn't every dog a therapy dog and every cat a therapy cat? And I think the only difference is if they are able to provide therapy for their person or for a broader set of folks. But
yeah, exactly.
I guess, and another thing I was always curious about there too is obviously there's more being learned every day, and there's new sort of studies that are happening. Like if you were, a graduate PhD advisor somewhere and could send a student off to go and research something where you think there's, interesting potential to learn more, or something that would be really another piece to peel back of the onion. Is there anything that you think would be kind of cool to go learn next?
Well, one of the things that I find really interesting is the correlation between animal homelessness and human poverty. And they're actually linked together. And so I think that really understanding that more is really important for both helping humans as much as it is for helping the animals. And one of the things, and I know that you're continuing with this program, but when I was at Humane Society Silicon Valley, we learned that of all of the dogs that were coming into, and actually we later learned of all the animals that were coming into Silicon Valley shelters, 30% were coming from 5 zip codes in East San Jose. So they were zip codes that were lower economic in nature. And, there are challenges there in terms of access to care and education and things like that. And it's like, I think that the flip side is a lot of times people say, well, I care about animals because they're easier than caring about people. And then you have people saying, oh, you can't help animals because it doesn't help people. And mutual rescue is about, it's an and, it's not people or animals, it's people and animals. And we need to help people understand the role that animals play. And for people that are really focused on the animals and not the people, it's like, if you care about the animals, you have to care about the people too. So.
Well, absolutely. I think they're inextricably linked. And I think the other thing that I love so much about that program, looking at the zip code data and figuring that out, is just really this notion of trying to look and find the root cause of a problem and situation, and figure out how to actually change, the landscape or change the underlying environment, rather than just, trying to deal with the symptom or something like that. And I think you're right. I think in the space with homeless people and homeless animals, there's a lot more to do than simply, help them. I think it's great to see programs like pet pantries, where you can go out and provide food for these folks that need to feed their pets. And I think that there's a lot of support that's an important step for, but there's also a lot more work to do from beyond that, I'm sure.
I mean, one of the things that I have a personal, it's not so much research, but when I grow old and I end up I guess I am getting old, but anyway, older, and I end up in a nursing home, man, I want animals around me. And I just would love to see that be a more intrinsic part of care for the elderly, that animals are really integrated and they make just such a huge difference. And that just has a soft spot for me, because I've just seen the impact that it's had on older people. And I as I said, I'm being self-serving, but when I'm 85, I want to be in a nursing home that has cats and dogs.
I'm right there with you. Actually, I think that's a really interesting idea. We could sort of think of it would be a pets and people sanctuary where
yeah, I like it.
Yeah. All right. So I guess, is there anything else that you sort of learned or took away from the process of writing the book? Obviously, this was a space that you've been a part of and thinking about for a long time, but just by stepping back and putting all these pieces together, were there some ahas that occurred from that?
Well, I think one of the things that was so much fun about writing the book is, so the book is divided into 4 sections. heart, body, mind, and connection. And I mean, I could have, there's another book I could have written, twice as much in the context of almost every human condition. There's a story out there about how an animal has helped a human transform that condition. And one of the things that was really interesting in doing interviews for the book, I did one particular interview, and the interviewer said, "You really need to talk to my sister." And he connected me to his sister, and his sister got over anorexia through a stray cat that showed up. Her family had kicked her. It was like tough love. They'd kicked her out of the house because she just was not dealing with her recovery and taking care of herself. And they just said, you have to help yourself. We can't do this. So they kicked her out of the house. She's living out of this motel, and this stray cat showed up at her door. And she started taking care of the cat and feeding the cat. And then she realized, oh, if I want this cat to live, I have to live too, which means I have to feed myself. And so, just when I think I can't possibly hear another story that moves me to tears, or that, like, oh, we've heard them all. No, I mean, that's what's really amazing.
Yeah, and that's what you said before. It's, it's so universal yet so deeply personal for everyone. And there's always another story, and it always sort of the power behind those is absolutely amazing too. So I guess the last thing before we take some Q&A, I know we wanted to leave some time for that. I know that one of the things that I've loved about working with you and seeing all of this is just the vision and the confidence that you have of so many things that are coming together. So I know that starting this conversation and getting it out there is something that's really important. But what do you think this, where is this leading? What are you really hoping that Mutual Rescue will become as we continue to go into the future?
Well, I really hope it's going to be a very well-known national, if not international, brand. And essentially there are three pillars that make up Mutual Rescue. One is authentic storytelling, and that's where the films and where the book come in, because without capturing people's hearts and minds, it means nothing. But then coupling that with engagement at the local level. So we've developed programs in collaboration with other shelters to create toolkits. Our first one was Doggy Day Out, and we talk about that in the book as well. We've got a new program that's going to be coming out in the fall related to Pet Pantry that I'm really excited about. And so that's about the opportunity to have national messaging, but being able to drive action at the local level. And then the third thing is corporate sponsorships. So, Humane Society of Silicon Valley could never get a big national sponsor because there's just not a big enough geographic footprint. But by having national awareness, national messaging, we can attract large sponsors, and then we can get that money down to the local level. And why that matters so much is because, Humane Society is a generic term for animal shelter. So we're not chapters of the Humane Society of the United States. It's an organization that's doing great work, but they're focused a lot on advocacy and legislation. And if you really want to be saving the animals in your own local community, you need to be supporting the rescue organizations that are in your community. So I think that's really important. And I hope there'll be another book with more stories and more research, and will really help to expand people's hearts and minds when it comes to the role that animals play, not just in our lives, but also in our community.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's there is no shortage of opportunity, and both in terms of people to engage in stories, and I think lots of work to be done, which is an exciting dynamic as well. I think we've talked about this together, but this idea of as animal shelters are doing a better and better job of making sure the animals end up in homes, we're sort of solving one set of problems, and animals in the homeless animals will become much less of an issue for communities. But then, as you're saying, other issues are arising. There are a lot of other ways that we can help and really serve the people and pets in our community. So I wearing my hat as the president of Humane Society Silicon Valley, I'm very grateful to you and Mutual Rescue for creating this this opportunity, both the awareness and resources to help shelters like us, sort of do our life-saving work. And,
So should we open it up for some questions?
Well, I actually do have a few questions, and I just want to remind the audience that they can go down to the little section that says Q&A, type their question in, and I will pass it on to Kurt and Carol. And the first one is a fan-based one. This individual wants to say hi to Carol and Kurt, and the initials are DE, so that's all I know.
Okay.
So whoever wants to claim DE, they're saying hello to you.
Hi, DE. Yeah.
And then the next question is, they would like you to mention what you did for the people in those East San Jose zip codes, spay and neuter or the other programs. What was happening there?
Yeah. So we've been doing free spay and neuter for residents of those 5 zip codes. It's been going on for, gosh, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years now, probably more than that. But what's really exciting is when we started the work, there were 11,000 dogs that were coming into the 6 Silicon Valley shelters that make up the coalition in Silicon Valley. And by doing these free spay and neuter surgeries, that number, last time I looked, had dropped to below 7,000. So what's really exciting is, we got the data, we came up with the program, we implemented the program, and we drove the numbers down. So, that's 4,000 animals per year that are not coming into the system. And that means we can save more lives. And that's actually led to Humane Society of Silicon Valley's ability to go and expand their rescue work and bringing in animals from the Central Valley while not risking any more lives being lost in Silicon Valley.
Okay. Claudia is starting to send in a question. So as she types, I'll ask you a question, which is, does something happen with the feral kittens or dogs? Do they come into the rescue shelters? Do they have a...
Kurt, do you want to talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. I give you credit for a lot of this as well, but we do absolutely see animals coming from lots of different sources. So ferals and strays are ones that come in, and with kittens especially, we call it kitten season, which is when the weather is warm, is when kittens or cats tend to breed, and then there are litters of kittens that come in, which is usually between sort of March or April and then into the fall, depending on the weather each year. And one of the things that HSSV was a pioneer in was actually being able to take all kittens regardless of age, so all the way down to bottle babies that were a day or two old that were dumped or abandoned or needed help. Because in the past, that's something where it was a pretty, you need kind of special training and resources and skills to be able to care for those very small and vulnerable animals. And most shelters just simply didn't have the bandwidth or the ability to care for them. And we were able to leverage both, kind of the expertise of our staff, but also our wonderful volunteers who are just, we have many, many committed folks who will absolutely do whatever they can to help any animals that are out there. And I think that allowed us to have homes and places that could go take these bottle babies where they would watch them 24/7 and feed them, every couple of hours and just do these things that would give them a chance where they wouldn't otherwise have it. So I think that that's been a big one as well, to see, both, the kittens coming in during kitten season, and then a lot of the animals. Carol mentioned that we've been reaching out further into the Central Valley to pull in, kind of at-risk animals that are there. Turns out puppies are a very vulnerable population that when they end up in shelters that don't have a veterinarian on staff and, however overcrowded, don't have as many people coming to adopt, they're actually very difficult for them to care for, and they often have diseases and other problems. So that's a population that we focus on transferring and bringing here to HSSV, where we've got the medical team that can take care of them, and then foster volunteers and all of that too. So I think that it is really an inspirational thing to be able to bring in, these vulnerable animals that need help. And then it's always one where people who are adopting, it's just very, kittens and puppies are amazing to get to have and bring into your family as well. So it's really, that's been a win-win for us all the way around.
Yeah, I also want to highlight, there's a program, we call it our Working Cat program, but And so Kurt is in
Actually right back here.
president's office. Yeah. So it's no longer applicable, but when I was there, the staff used to call it Carol's Ferals. And so when I got to Humane Society of Silicon Valley, there's an area it's right through that door where
that's where Tulip is actually looking to see if she has any friends that might come by.
Yeah. And that used to be the president's patio. And it was like, well, I'm not going out and having lunch on my patio. We can do something better with that space. So we enclosed that space and it became the community cat garden. So when cats would come in that weren't social enough to be household pets, they would go into the community cat garden, and then I mean, this is still going on. And then the organization works to find appropriate outdoor placements for those cats. So that made a huge difference in our ability to save the cats that were coming in. And you know, these are animals that have every right to life. And you know, I'm really proud of how passionate the employees are at HSSV, and the fact that they're willing to approach me and say, would you be willing to give up the president's patio for cat garden? And I said, sure. And then they said, great, Carol's Ferals.
So
Now
I had
it's Kurt's cats.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
It's kitties.
So I have two questions about the books. Are mutual rescue films and books available in other languages? And then when will we be seeing more mutual rescue stories on the website?
Yeah, great. So yes, Mutual Rescue, the book, has been released in German and in Italian. So it came out April of 2020. It came out in Germany, and then June of 2020, it came out in Italy. And we're in the process right now of negotiating a contract for the book in Australia and New Zealand. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And yeah, we actually just have selected our next story for our next mutual rescue film and secured funding from that. Our very generous board member, Blythe Jack, is making that possible. So you can be looking for our next mutual rescue film. Will be coming out this fall in conjunction with the launch of our mutual rescue pet pantry program. And also some new content that we'll be doing to support that initiative. So there's definitely more to come. Things slowed down a little bit during COVID, but we're ramping back up and excited about that.
Let's see. Oops, how has COVID affected what you do, and what do you see in a post-COVID world for HSSV and mutual rescue?
Kurt, you want to tackle HSSV and COVID?
And COVID, yes.
That's handed you the baton and you got stuck with that.
Yeah, that was an interesting one for me. So we I started here in January when Carol decided, with a very timely forward-looking view, that it would be a good time to go and move to the East Coast and you know, let some new folks come in here. So it's been actually a really interesting set of events, because I think obviously when COVID first hit, nobody knew what was going to happen the next day and the next hour, and we quickly became very good at sort of redesigning the things that we did in creative ways to continue what was possible for our mission, but in the new world as it evolved around us. And you know, it also started a good process of just making us ask, you know, well, how can we do this better? What can we learn? And there've been lots of things that we actually are excited to be able to do, even when the world goes back to being more open, such as, you know, virtual adoption appointments, which are a great way to have people, you know, kind of a broader community be able to meet animals, and, you know, sort of a different channel to do that. Same thing with some telemedicine and support we do for fosters. And there's just lots of pieces of it that we're applying going forward. But I will say it's been a very hard but inspiring experience, just to see what our staff, our volunteers, everybody has really come together to figure out just how do we continue to make this happen in this different world. Because you know, many things can be done via Zoom, but we haven't figured out a way yet to feed or bathe or care for animals in a way that isn't here on site. So it's definitely been a fun adventure.
Yeah.
Well, this is probably a good time to transition over to Carol and her guest. So Carol, do you want to step up now?
Yeah. So I am very excited to introduce one of the mutual rescue films. This story is actually not in the book, but it very easily could have been because it relates to connection and relationships. And so Bhuvana, Abashak, and Lollipop is one of our more recent mutual rescue films. And it is a wonderful tribute to a cat that was adopted from Humane Society Silicon Valley by one of our volunteers, and how it saved and transformed her marriage. And wow, it's a pretty compelling story. So with that, it's about a 6-minute film, just to manage people's expectations. And so we'll go ahead and watch the film, and then we'll have a special guest after the film. So you can probably guess who that might be. So stick around, enjoy the film, and we'll have some more great conversation and dialogue.
I spotted her in a train. She was like hanging out. There's something special about this girl.
He kept, trying to talk to me. We became really good friends.
The fact that she's a very fiery person made me fall in love.
He was kind and loving and sensitive. I couldn't imagine a life without him. It was magical. And in December 2015, we got married. But I didn't know that things would fall apart so fast. I don't want to imagine what would have happened if Lollipop hadn't been around. I realized in the first year how bad things were.
Bhuvana is emotionally very strong, but when emotions are involved, for me, it is very difficult. When we got married, it was the first time when, families were involved. All these expectations started coming in. Every time we had an argument about this, I would shut down.
I always had trouble managing my anger. I felt like I was talking to a wall. I would try talking, and then my anger would take over. There were times when the house felt like it was going to light up on fire because we both were so angry at each other, and sometimes it was just silence.
There were days when we would not speak to each other. Felt like we were roommates.
I realized that I needed to do something else. I always loved cats. So I found a volunteering program at the local animal shelter, and I became a cat volunteer there. I started volunteering after work, and the animals were so happy to see me. All they had to give was love. And that's all I needed. I was volunteering one night, and I saw a 6-month-old black kitten. I could feel some nervousness about her, but I just sat there and waited for her. In a few seconds, she poked her head out, and I guess she just knew I was family, because she jumped out and ran and sat on my lap. I don't know how to explain it. I just knew that she was the one.
Bhuvana called me, and I was a little hesitant, but I came to the shelter and she hopped on my lap.
And I remember he said, I guess she's like a dog, so it's okay. And that's all I needed. I immediately went up the front desk and I was like, I want to adopt Lollipop. Lollipop had a pretty rough start to life. She had an upper respiratory infection, she had gingivitis, she had ringworm. She came to the shelter and they treated her for all of those illnesses.
I was very apprehensive about things, and I never thought of a cat as a pet. I was very clear that Bhuvana would have to take care of her.
I was able to focus myself at work and at home because she was there for me. And she just returned all the love back to me. But pretty soon after we adopted Lollipop, my father was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and it was devastating. I had to go to spend some time with my father. When I was away in India for 6 months, I just focused on my father. But with my husband, things fell apart even more. It felt like I was chatting with a robot.
I didn't know how to handle this conversation with her because I was afraid of how serious her father's illness was.
I needed help figuring out what was the next step. What would happen after my dad died. But there was no one to talk about that with me because my husband was just lost in his own thoughts and he was just unavailable. I didn't know what we were holding on to anymore. There was nothing left. When I came back to the US, I was so angry then. And I was also filled with grief. I had pretty much decided that we were going to go through a divorce. But I wanted to go back for Lollipop. When I came back, I expected Lollipop to immediately be my best friend. But she initially was scared of me. I wasn't sure what was going to happen because my understanding was that my husband was not connected with Lollipop, and I was so sad that she was alone. But I saw that their relationship was amazing, and I realized that in my absence, they had bonded, and she was closer to him than she was to me.
In Bhuvana's absence, I knew I had to take care of Lollipop, to clean and feed Lollipop. Soon after, we started developing a bond. I started off with the rule that make sure that the cat is not on the bed, she's not on the couch, she's not ruining the furniture, and that would be a happy Lollipop and that'd be a happy Abashak. And Lollipop disagreed with it. And pretty soon she was sleeping right under my legs in the same bed. Lollipop's unconditional love opened something inside of me. I started talking to her and telling her that, don't worry, mommy's gonna be home soon, and telling her how much I love her.
I asked him, what changed? And he said, Lollipop was the only piece of you that was left behind. And I wanted to love her and take care of her because I knew how much that meant to you, and in the process, I fell in love with Lollipop. He had become emotionally more available. And I started realizing that Lollipop had a huge role to play in that.
We took help of some counseling, and that's when we learned the lack of communication that we have.
There'd be times when I'd just be screaming and shouting, and I knew I had to stop, but I just couldn't. And Lollipop would transform into this confident tiger. She would walk into the room and jump on my lap or my husband's lap and look at me as if to say, "Stop, Mom, that's enough." And she knew what an effect that she had on me. Lollipop made sure that my husband and I were in the same room to play with her and to interact with her. She was just not okay if it was just one of us. Having one common thing that we both just loved changed things. And I didn't want to lose him anymore.
I can't imagine our life the way it is now without Lollipop. She's a black cat, but she has added color to our lives.
We're in a place where we're happy, where we look forward to being with each other. And we call the three of us a family.
So I hope you all enjoyed the film. I want to tell you a brief story. When we premiered this film at the Fur Ball, at Humane Society Silicon Valley's Fur Ball, we finished that film, and then we introduced Bhuvana and Abashak. And as they walked up to the stage, the entire audience was chanting, "Lollipop, Lollipop." And it really was an extraordinary moment. So I am delighted now to introduce to you Bhuvana, and Abashak is there. And then do you want to introduce the latest member of your family?
Yes, this is Sia. She's 9 months old, so Lollipop now has a younger sister.
Hey, Abashak, it's great to see you guys. Oh my gosh, how exciting that your family has grown and that you can point back to Lollipop as the reason behind it. That really is pretty amazing.
For sure. I look back and I see like Sia and I see Abhishek, and this would not have been possible without Lollipop.
So Bhuvana, take us back to when you first started volunteering at Humane Society Silicon Valley. You know, what was that experience like? And you know, tell us a little bit more about meeting Lollipop and that whole experience.
Yeah, I started volunteering at HSSV in March 2016. And, you know, this was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. You know, the people there, the animals there, they're truly life-changing. You know, the people there care so much about their fellow human beings and the animals. It truly brought back my faith in humanity and the world. So it was one of the best experiences ever. I mean, it was during my volunteering time that I saw Lollipop. That was December 2016. So it was just a regular shift. You know, I was gonna head back home after volunteering, and I noticed that this one kitten just didn't show up to see the commotion, to see what was going on. So I said, you know, I'll just say hi to her before I head home, make sure she's okay. And yeah, and that decision changed the course of my life.
Wow, that is really amazing. So you brought Lollipop home. So tell us a little bit more about how the relationship did or didn't develop with Abashak.
Yeah, so he did come with me. I remember he came with me to HSSV to pick up Lollipop, but he was very clear that, you know, she's your cat, you know, you're going to sign the papers. I'm just here to support you. And when we were driving back home with Lollipop, you know, I remember him telling me, you know, I can't believe you talked me into this. There's a cat with us. But, you know, he was very curious about her. So he would come with me for every play session. You know, he would be there. And, you know, he was genuinely surprised to see that cats, you know, like to play and they like to cuddle. And, you know, Lollipop knew that he needed some little extra help, you know, to get comfortable with him. So she was extremely patient with him, and, you know, she would sit on his lap, she would rub against him. And, you know, slowly, you know, Abhishek started to get fond of her.
Yeah. Well, I have to laugh a little bit because it reminds me of the story of my dad and Chester, you know, just being determined that you're not going to fall for the cat. And then, you know, they just kind of fall hook, line, and sinker. And it's all that much more wonderful because of that. Mm-hmm. So you were in India, you know, taking care of your dad for 6 months. I mean, that's a long time. Did you have any idea of kind of like what was transpiring between Abashak and Lollipop, or, you know, how did you handle that being away, and what were your thoughts and concerns? And
yeah, I had to go back to India 2 months after adopting Lollipop. So it was very hard. I was very nervous. I didn't know how it would work out, but I knew he would take care of her. So I knew that. I just didn't know how that relationship would work. But, you know, I just put my faith in him, and I was like, you got to do this. And I left. And yeah, but I honestly never thought that in my absence, they would grow so close to each other. And, you know, it was a hard time for him as well. Communication lines between me and him had been broken by then. We weren't even talking to each other. So he was alone here for 6 months, and Lollipop was his constant source of affection and love. You know, she knew he was going through a tough phase, and she was there with him day and night. You know, she would sleep next to him. She was always around him. You know, he told me once that his only motivation to come back home after work was because he knew Lollipop was eagerly waiting for him. Yeah, she would hear his car pull up, and she would just run and go stand next to the door. And he told me, yeah, she's like a dog. Yeah. So, you know, her unwavering love for Abhishek really transformed him. And they're the best friends that they still continue to be today because of that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was it like, you know, the film crew came to your house, you know, cats are not the easiest animals to film. So what was it like? How did Lollipop respond? What was it like, you know, participating in the filming process?
Yeah, she's a very shy cat. So she was not excited about having like humans, especially humans with big equipment, come into her house. So the crew was very kind though. You know, they left all her equipment overnight, so Lollipop could, you know, adjust to it. And, you know, day one came and they came in the house. She came out and she was like, uh-oh, no way. And that's it. That's the only appearance she made on day one. And, you know, the crew bought catnip and treats and toys, everything to lure her. But she was like, nah, this is not good enough. And so day two comes and we're getting desperate, and not one shot of Lollipop. So, we tried to film her like we would film like wild animals in the jungle. We planted cameras in the house and we left. We were like, okay, now hopefully we'll get some footage of her. And 2 hours, not one footage of Lollipop. She was too smart for that. So finally, the crew had to resort using a cat soft toy. They actually bought it and they used it as a prop in the movie. And most of the stuff you see on their home videos that we shot of her. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I guess she's not gonna be a movie star probably more than once. So oh my
Yeah.
God, that's really funny. So there's been a lot of changes in your life since the film was made. Tell us about that and
Yeah.
how Lollipop is responding to all of those changes. And
Yeah, so when Sia was born, Lollipop, I don't think she understood because I think she smelled, it was the same smell. She was like, okay. But when she became 3 months old and started like moving, Lollipop was like, oh, there's a new human here. But Sia adores Lollipop. Like she will giggle and squeal when she was like 3 months old when Lollipop would come around. And now she's starting to kind of walk. And so she only wants to follow Lollipop and everything has to be about her. She wants to sit next to her. She wants to pet her. And Lollipop is like not okay with this new overzealous family member, but she's learning to love her. She's being patient, just like she was patient with Abashak. She's like, okay, you can pet me, but not too hard. So Sia's learning her boundaries as well. So it's a very cute relationship to look at, but I know Lollipop will take her time, and we're okay with that.
oh, that's awesome. And how has the relationship with Lollipop and Abashak continued to evolve?
Oh my gosh, I wish I could share photos right now. I have so many photos of him holding the baby and Lollipop on his lap. And it's so cute. And I have them actually through when she was a newborn, when she was 3 months old. Like his love for her has not changed at all. We always say that, we have 2 daughters. One is
Oh, that's lovely. Well, and undoubtedly you are raising another animal lover in the world. And, I've always I talk about this in the book, that, my love of animals came from my mom. And, similar to your situation. I mean, like there's just pictures of my mom's holding me and my grandmother's holding the cat. So it was like I had a furry sibling, and my human siblings were much older than I was. And so growing up, my day-to-day siblings were the animals we had in the house. And we always had we did have a dog for a period of time, but then we always had multiple cats. And it was such a joy. So I love that you are raising another animal lover and passing that love on to her. And that'll be something that'll be incredibly meaningful in her life, I'm sure, going forward. So, well, thank you so much for being here. And why don't Cindy, I think maybe can help us field some more questions. And I know Kurt's there too. So maybe any questions that anybody might have for me or Bhuvana or Kurt or
Right, wonderful. Well, I will remind the audience that you can type in your questions for any and all 3 of them. So as we wait for questions to come in, I have a few more that were here, which is, how can people help mutual rescue in the future?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is to spread the word about the films and the book, really encourage people so that they get the essence of what mutual rescue is about. And then stay tuned for the launch of our Pet Pantry program. So one of the things that we'll be doing is helping shelters all across the country with their Pet Pantry programs, creating opportunities for people to donate to those wish lists. And so that's some direct action that people can take. And then we also anticipate some corporate sponsorship opportunities related to our Doggy Day Out program, which will be other ways that we can raise money and get that money directed to the local level. So in the short term, share the films, talk up the book, and stay tuned. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and our other social channels, so you can stay up to date and hear the announcements when these other things get rolled out in the late summer, early fall.
So, Bhuvana, this is a question pretty much for you. Anonymous attendee wants to know what the response has been to your film. What has it done to your personal life or your interactions with others?
Yeah, I can actually share. This happened to me at the vet's office. I was taking Lollipop in for her annual, vet visit, and I said, "Yeah, my cat's name is Lollipop." And someone was like, "Are you that? Are you Lollipop's mom?" I said, "Yeah." She's like, "I've seen you on the video," and it was such a nice experience. I was like, "Oh, I'm glad." I was like, "Did you like it?" And we had a conversation, and she told me about how animals have changed her life. It was actually wonderful to know that, even if one person gets impacted, I think it's worth it. So it's nice to be a star, but a star who actually has something good to offer the world. So yeah.
And so how did you first learn about mutual rescue? How did you and Carol connect?
So I actually received an email from Humane Society because they were looking for stories from people who adopted pets at the Humane Society. And I saw that and I really wanted to share my story. Plus, I was a volunteer. So I really wanted to share how HSSV impacted me and how they got Lollipop into my life. So I definitely want to share that story. And I sent my story in. And that's how I got connected with Carol. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, I'm just so grateful to Bhuvana and Abashak and their willingness to share their story. I mean, they're so vulnerable and genuine in their experience, and that is not an easy thing to do. And so, thank you for your willingness to be that raw and authentic to help animals and people. It was an incredibly generous gift that you've given the world.
Yeah, I feel like animals do impact that part of your life where you're so vulnerable, where other humans are not able to help you. And I do want to share that, to make other people come forward, to make sure that they see what value animals could add to them. So yeah, anything for Lollipop and her furry friends.
So Kurt, this is a question for you. When will Doggy Day out of resume? Because your volunteers really miss it.
we miss it as well. And I sort of quick aside, actually, Doggy Day Out was one of the ways I got involved with HSSV in the first place as a volunteer, even having dogs of my own, getting to come in and do that. So we are still in the mode of evaluating which services and programs we can bring back. And I saw there was a question as well about kind of virtual adoptions and being able to get back to a place where you can meet animals in person. And I think all of these are things where as the restrictions from the county and the state continue to go back down, I actually just got an email tonight that we're officially going from purple back to the red tier here in Santa Clara County, which was great to see. We are definitely working to bring as many of these services back online and sort of safely but consistently continue to bring people back here. So I don't have a date where I can promise when it's available, but I 100% agree with you that it's important for us to get going, and I miss it. I'm sure our dogs miss it too. And I will say it's been great to see over the last few months we've at least been able to bring a few more volunteers back bit by bit, and I can't wait till we have everybody else here on site.
So we have a few more questions about Lollipop, as in how did she get her name? Because she is black, and I have yet to have a black Lollipop.
The licorice, right?
Right, right.
So her name was Chloe. I remember when I met her back in the Humane Society, and my mom, you just saw her pass by. My mom had read a magazine where she was like, "Oh my God, it's so cute. The cat's name is Lollipop." And I was like, "Oh, you know what? If I ever get a cat, I'm gonna call her Lollipop." And then Chloe, Lollipop, came into my life, and I was like, "She's black, but you know what? She's as sweet as a lollipop." So yeah, there you go.
There you go. Nice connection. So how were you able to reestablish your connection with Lollipop when you returned?
Yeah, honestly, she was like, why are you coming between me and Abhishek? We're a team here. So it was hard for me. I was like, what I'm supposed to be a part of your team. So, but Lollipop took a day, I think. And then she was like, yeah, I remember you. You're my first human. And and I spent so much time trying to play with her and bond with her. And seeing me with Abhishek, I think she realized that, yeah, we're a family. So it took her just a day. And then, yeah, and she became my best friend too.
Lovely. And I'm going to pose this question to both Carol and Kurt, which is, while there are many domesticated animals in need of a human friend, the non-domesticated animals of this world are suffering greatly to our changing environment. Can you comment on the transfer of the identification with domestic animals to those which are fending for themselves all around us? I'm thinking coyotes, mountain lions, you know, they're all here in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a bigger and bigger issue in climate change is part of that. You know, Humane Society of Silicon Valley is specifically focused on companion animals, and so I don't know that the mission of HSSV will expand because there's a lot of work around that. But I completely agree and totally support the fact that we need to be embracing that idea. And I think the reason why mutual rescue is important is because the first step to help people embrace animals, whether they're domesticated or not domesticated, is to establish the relationship between people and domesticated animals. And you know, David Whitman and I have talked about the fact that you could expand mutual rescue to include non-domesticated animals. That, you know, there's the potential for that, because it is so important in the fact that we are all interconnected. I believe that, and our planet is interconnected, and to the extent that we don't realize that, it is to our own detriment. Kurt, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with that, and I think that that's just that is the overarching point of the connection. You know, I think that's the theme here too. It's that is such an important piece, and I think that I agree with you that that's sort of at HSSV we certainly need to sort of be focused on the place where we have the unique ability to make a difference, which is with companion animals. But I do agree that sort of one of the things that I think we're seeing even within this space is this transition from the idea of being focused solely on saving animals and more about serving our community and looking to see what we're a part of. And I think that, you know, that's all part of it. We're connected to the people and the humans around us. We're connected to our environment. We're connected to the other animals that are, you know, sort of either non-domesticated or unowned, you know, pets that are out there too. And those are all, you know, they're all connected and part of the same, you know, same world that we're trying to make a better place. So I agree that that's something where we can't just, you know, we're not going to be able to ignore any of these things going forward.
And then, so to bring it back around, one person wants to know how many and where are the facilities for Humane Society of Silicon Valley?
Well, I'm sitting right here. So our Animal Community Center is our main facility, which is located in Milpitas. And in non-COVID times, we have neighborhood adoption centers that are located in Petco's. We have one in West San Jose. The other one, help me out, Carol, Sunnyvale. Yeah. Okay. I don't remember the world without COVID.
I know, right?
But so we are based here and kind of work with a group of people around the Bay Area. And I think one of the other things we're excited and looking forward to is having kind of mobile services where we can go out in the community and take some of the, you know, sort of veterinary and other services out to the folks who need it.
And another question for, excuse me, I cannot pronounce your name correctly. My stutter's getting in the way. Are relationships between people and animal companions different in India than in the United States?
Yeah, that's a great question. Mostly in India, you will see that there are lots of stray animals who are in desperate need of homes. And, you know, it's a developing country. The human needs have always come before, and the animals there definitely suffer. You know, but things are changing. You know, there are people who are willing to adopt, you know, rescue animals, stray animals, and give them a good home. But we are far, far away from that problem. In my home, we've never had pets before. My connection with pets back in India was when I had a stray cat at home. And people would say things like, you know, you will never go to heaven because you have a stray cat. You know, people wouldn't come into our homes sometimes because they say, oh my gosh, you have a cat who eats Rats, there were. It's hard. Me and my sister fought with all of these people when we were kids, saying, what, if you don't want to come, don't come. But things have changed, but we have a long way to go. So.
Yeah, I'm really glad whoever asked that question. It was a great question, because I learned something very definitely. Well, that is all of the questions that we have right now. I just want to remind people that you're welcome to send in more questions. And if there are any other comments that you want to bring in to wrap this up, that would be fantastic.
So I just happened to take a look. There's a question here about how Humane Society became a model shelter.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So I'd love to answer that, just because it's near and dear to my heart.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think I would love to give that one to you for sure.
Yeah. So it was very interesting. When I got to Humane Society of Silicon Valley, I had never heard of shelter medicine. And but what I saw was that I felt we could be better operationally than we were. And at the time, Jeannie Wu was our vice president of human resources. And I said to her, there's got to be some best practices out there in terms of like how you run an animal shelter. I mean, I came from high tech. So I was like, I don't have any business saying what best practices are, but there's got to be people who do. And so Jeannie actually just started getting on the phone and calling around, and she found the shelter medicine program at UC Davis. And that's how I got introduced to shelter medicine, and learned that there was an association of shelter veterinarians, and they had put together a set of guidelines about how a shelter should ideally be run. And what was so interesting about it was no shelter had actually implemented those guidelines. They just had been developed in 2010. That's how new this idea of managing shelters in a more kind of professional and rigorous way was coming into being. And so, Jeannie and I are both type A personalities, and we saw the opportunity to plant a stake in the ground and have Humane Society of Silicon Valley become the world's first model shelter. So I had the great opportunity to interview Dr. Christy Camilla, who is one of the few veterinarians who at the time was trained in shelter medicine, and was able to convince her to come to Humane Society of Silicon Valley. And I think, a major reason for her coming was because she wanted to implement the guidelines. And I said, you come and I'll back you all the way. We'll get these implemented. But one of my favorite stories about shelter medicine and becoming a model shelter goes back to Dr. Kate Hurley. There were 14 veterinarians that came together to create the guidelines. And Dr. Hurley in particular was on a consult. And this was many years ago, probably in the early 2000s. And at this consult, when she first showed up, there was a dog there named Nala. And Nala stuck in her mind so much because she had a dog that looked like Nala when she was growing up. And she took a picture of Nala on this consult. 3 weeks later, she came back to this shelter, and Nala was dying. And she ultimately passed away from pneumonia. And that was the moment that Dr. Hurley made the pledge that it is not enough to be no kill. No kill is not enough, because you actually have to be making sure that you have rigorous biosecurity measures and protocols in place so that healthy animals are not dying. And that was her motivation. That's why she came together with this consortium of other veterinarians to create these guidelines. And the really wonderful and amazing story is, so we worked really hard at HSSV to get these guidelines implemented. And then we had a team from UC Davis come down and audit Humane Society of Silicon Valley to verify, yes, indeed, we had achieved this, because at this point, there still, I don't think, is a certifying organization per se, but the team came down to do this audit in order to verify that we had indeed achieved and implemented all these guidelines. And what was just really amazing is when Kate came down, they were going through the back of the house and they're looking up on the board to see animals that had been adopted that day. And there was a dog named Nala who had been adopted. And so it came full circle for her. And we all really felt just how incredibly significant that moment was, that Nala got adopted the day that Dr. Hurley was there to certify HSSV as a model shelter. So pretty proud of that.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, let's wrap this up. And Bhuvana, Kurt, and Carol, I want to thank you for your time tonight and the stories. You definitely touched our brains and our hearts. Yeah, I just want to go over and grab my kitty, my ancient kitty. Luckily, he will be sleeping with us very soon. And Carol, thank you so much. I know you're in a different time zone, and I appreciate you staying up at this late hour for us. I want to let everybody know that tomorrow there's a special event, again with Carol, and this one is geared for children, for kids. So round up your little ones and register for the 4 p.m. event. I think that you might even see some four-legged visitors. So, so thank you all for your time tonight, and thank you for all of you that are in the audience. We really appreciate your doing this. And now it's time for me to go back and finish reading my book. So I've really been enjoying it. So good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.